The pressure is on. This is Off the Edge on Tide 100.9.
Focus on what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. Think about that. Don't think about how you feel, how tired you are, how hot it is. You got to push yourself on the field like when you're playing football.
It's my honor to present the National Championship Trophy to Coach Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide.
To me, this is the ultimate team. All these guys bought into everything they needed to do to be the best players that they could be. There's more togetherness on this team than almost any team that we've ever had. And they had to overcome and persevere so much adversity through this season, and they've done it magnificently. And I'm so proud of this group for what they've been able to accomplish and going undefeated and winning the national championship.
Streaming live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the Tide 100.9 app. Here is your host of Off the Edge, Jacob Harrison.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome into Off the Edge Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide Sports. I am Jacob Harrison. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on a Monday morning. We are into the thick of it with the Alabama Crimson Tide fall camp getting underway Friday afternoon. Had another practice on Saturday. We heard from the coaches yesterday. On Sunday, we'll hear some of that audio throughout the day sprinkled in. If you go to tide109.com, though, you can read along, because what we're going to do in this very first segment is we're going to break down Jameson Williams, who is the exciting, incredibly fast transfer wide receiver from Ohio State, who's rocking the number 1 jersey this year for the Alabama Crimson Tide on offense. And he got some serious looks there in practice from what we saw. Mason Woods and I, who's here interning with us this morning, what we got to see in practice on Friday was a guy that was taking reps with Trayshawn Holden behind John Mechie and Javon Baker. So taking early snaps, early reps, that's a good indicator. And you expect a guy with this kind of speed to be a big-time contributor. So we'll dive into that here in just a minute, as well as what the coaches had to say yesterday. All that and more here Off the Edge. 205-342-9904 is the phone number to call. You can always join the show. We don't have any guests today, so it's your show for the next 55 minutes and some change. And before we get too started, the show as always streams live on the Tide 109 app. That's your best friend as an Alabama Crimson Tide fan. Whether written or on the air, the content that you need is there for you on your Apple or Android devices. So dive into the App Store, the Google Play Store, and download the Tide 109 app today. Get instant alerts, those sorts of things, all the great features that the Tide 109 app has to offer to you, as well as Alabama Vintage. Big congrats to Chuck, who won our $25 gift card to Alabama Vintage last Friday, guessing D'Amico Ryans as our Alabama Vintage Player of the Month. We do that on the very first Friday of every single month, so we'll be looking forward to doing it again in September after the season has begun. So you'll be even more enthralled with what Charlie has by that time. The store has grown so magnificently over the past several months, opening up earlier this year, and he's got great stock in there in the store. 2210 University Boulevard, under the Crimson awning across from City Hall, in the heart of downtown T-Town. Whether you need jerseys, commemorative tees, sweaters, starter jackets, hats, shoes, you name it, Charlie's got it. The memorabilia that can line your walls within your home is there as well. Whether it's just the Alabama Crimson Tide vintage clothing in general or professional gear, Charlie's got you covered. Alabama Vintage, AlabamaVTG.com, at AlabamaVTG on the Instagram account as well. Be sure to find those brand ambassadors as well for 15% off your order at AlabamaVTG.com. So, why Jameson Williams, right? Why the guy that seems to be in the middle of a very muddied position? This is a very, very deep group at wide receiver, right? There's reason to believe that there's going to be a big rotation there, right? because you have so many guys that bring so many different things to the field. Ajayi Hall is a great 50-50 ball catcher, as we saw in the A-Day game. Christian Leary, JoJo Earl, those are two guys that bring immense speed that reminds you of a guy like Jalen Waddle, who can take, jet sweeps and take crossing routes and take them the distance, right? You got Javon Baker, Trayshawn Holden, Xavier Williams, and Tal Jones-Bell, who are all guys that are veterans now with 2 or 3 years of experience, who have kind of had to sit and learn behind the rideouts. The four of the best wide receivers to ever play at Alabama were here at one time, and those guys have had to sit and learn and have a little bit of patience as they continue to work on their craft and get on the field, right? Well, Jameson Williams kind of saw that writing on the wall, right? And in 2019, as a 4-star recruit, chose the Ohio State Buckeyes over the Alabama Crimson Tide. Who could really blame him, right? But in that regard, 2 years later, very similarly to Henry To'oTo'o, decides later to go into the transfer portal and join the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, in 2 years at Ohio State, just 15 catches, 266 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So, Jacob, why are you so excited about a guy with such measling stats, such minimal stats in 2 years with the Ohio State Buckeyes? Well, it's because he still found a way onto the rotation, right? When you look at guys like Brian Robinson, who have had the depth chart stacked against them their entire career, but yet when the opportunity presents itself, you feel confident that he's going to be able to explode and get the job done, right? It's the same case here with Jameson Williams because of what he has shown, that he is capable of doing, what he is capable of being for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Because you look at his average yards per reception is 17.7. His 3 touchdown catches, 61 yards, 38 yards, 45 yards. His deep threat ability is something that the Alabama Crimson Tide doesn't have, as well as veteran experience in doing it. Sure, his experience is slightly limited because of what is a great receiving core in Buckeye country as well. But he brings that here to Alabama, and he's already putting himself in a position to be an X factor for this team. And you don't have to question Bryce Young's arm strength. Bryce Young has more than enough arm strength to hit this guy in stride down the field. It's all there. And it all works for the Alabama Crimson Tide. It all works for Jameson Williams, who's got the goods to make these sorts of things happen and happen well. And, Coach Saban said it as much himself, that when it came down to bringing Jameson Williams into the fold, it was about finding somebody who had that speed and complemented the players around him, right? Somebody that had the experience after losing the 4 rideouts, right? That's what you get. Because while, yes, John Mechie did help in down the field plays last year, and while, yes, Devontae Smith was a do-it-all kind of guy, Jalen Waddle brings his own special abilities to the field, right? Slade Bolden stepped in and was serviceable as a slot receiver. Well, Slade gives you that underneath route. You may lose what Waddle and Smitty had last year, but with John Mechie, you've got a true number 1 wide receiver. You know that he's got all the goods. He can do whatever it is that you ask of him, whether it's over the middle, on the sideline, deep down the field, or underneath. And while Jameson Williams, his specialty is getting down the field, his specialty is blurring past defensive backs for long touchdowns, that still serves a role. Because when you look back on the rideouts, they all brought something different to the table. They were all unique. Sure, they were all incredible athletes. They were all guys that you could look at and say, wow, that's one of the best receivers in all college football. But they all did it in different ways. Henry Ruggs was the Jameson Williams type player. John Mechie was the Jerry Jeudy type player. Who's going to be the Jalen Waddle? Who's going to be the Devontae Smith? Only time can tell. And Jameson Williams built very similar to Devontae Smith. And when you look at his ability when he does catch underneath routes, there's a lot of potential there because teams are so worried about his speed that he's caught so many hitch passes from Ohio State that it kind of killed his average yards per reception. But he's able to run those routes crisp and tight. And that allows for him to make plays on the perimeter as well. You can go check out the video breakdowns on Twitter at JHarrisonOTE. And I'm telling you, in October, in October of last year when Jalen Waddle broke his ankle and David Pollack got on ESPN and said, stick a fork in Alabama, they're done. I wrote on Tide109.com, don't sleep on Smitty. Don't do it. If you do it, you're in the wrong. You're discounting somebody for the wrong reasons because his stats always backed it up. His stats were always there. He was leading Alabama in certain statistics that was mind-blowing considering the talent that surrounded him, right? So don't do it. I didn't predict he'd win a Heisman. I didn't go that far at all. I just said the team was still in good hands with Devontae Smith. I'm telling you again with Jameson Williams. I'm not saying he's going to catch 40 passes for 8 touchdowns and 700 yards. I'm not saying that. I am saying that he's an X factor. And I am saying that he's a guy that when he's on the field, he's going to blaze past defensive backs. And he's somebody that's special, that's worth watching and worth keeping an eye on when it comes to these wide receivers. Because for all intents and purposes, as much as I like Trayshawn Holden and the chemistry that he has, there were some concerns with drops at A-Day. And there were, when you consider what Trayshawn Holden and Tal Jones-Bell and all, Javon Baker, Xavier Williams, you keep going down the line to Ajayi Hall and Ja'Cory Brooks, there's still things that all of these guys need to work on. And there's things Jameson Williams needs to work on as well. But to be an elite player at one thing still allows for you to be a massive, massive contributor. And that's what I'm counting on with Jameson Williams. Whether or not he goes out there and he's a starting X receiver or Y receiver or whatever the terminology is on that, that remains to be seen throughout fall camp, right? Because there's plenty of questions that we've kind of been handed since Sunday. The status of Jaleel Billingsley, the status of LeBron Ray, these sorts of things, the status of Trey Sanders, all of these things have been kind of drawn back up into question after hearing the coaches talk, right? So now we get into a spot where, okay, well, when health's a factor, when practice reps are a factor, when understanding the offense is a factor, all of these things, when they all come into play, who are the guys that you feel confident about getting the job done? Well, for me, it's Jameson Williams. I'm very excited to see Trayshawn Holden. I'm very excited to see Javon Baker. I'm excited to see all of these wide receivers. I'm excited about the guys who are proven, John Mechie and Slay Bolden. But if I'm hitching my horse to a cart that's unproven, one that might have a little bit of a squeaky wheel, but you feel confident it's going to get you down the Oregon Trail, it's Jameson Williams. That's where I'm standing right now, looking into day 3 of Crimson Tide training camp. We'll take a break. We'll come back. JR, don't go anywhere. We'll get to your phone call, man. 205-342-9904 here on Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama sports.
From the Town Square Media News Center, we've got a police standoff at the Motel 6 on McFarland Boulevard, just south of Skyland. What we've been told, police were called to the scene about 7:30 this morning. 2 intruders broke into a room. One of the intruders was attacked by a dog owned by the person staying in the room. The other intruder apparently then shot the dog. We don't know the condition of the dog. One person has been taken into custody. The other is holding police off and is barricaded in a room. We'll keep you informed, but you might want to avoid the area. I'm Captain Ray.
Fear, guilt, indecision. These raw feelings are common when users witness an opioid overdose. As a bystander, fear and indecision may race through your mind, but it's vital that you call for help. Alabama's Good Samaritan law protects those who act in good faith in situations like an opioid overdose. Find out more about Alabama's Good Samaritan law at VitalAlabama.com.
Touchdown! Alabama wins! The Alabama football countdown clock is driven by Crawford Insurance, Tuscaloosa's low-cost auto insurer. Call 752-6489 for a free quote today.
Roll Tide! Roll Tide!
There are 26 days until Alabama football.
Dominate!
Don't miss a play at the Sportsbook at Pearl River Resort. Your front row seat to all the action. Place bets on all professional and most college sports at the counter, kiosk, or on your phone. Then catch the game on one of our 20 big screens from the comfort of the newly remodeled Timeout Lounge. Plus, the PRR Sports app gives you access to live, in-play sports betting. Sportsbook at Pearl River Resort. Be more than a fan. Be a player. Must be 21.
I said chantilly lace and eggshell, not matte.
Colby's interior design consultancy is floored with new clients.
Wait, what am I looking at here? This looks like plaid.
They need an admin with an eye for design and a knack for numbers.
Okay, hey, look, take a look at this. Do those numbers look right?
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Screen for quality candidates with the skills your role needs with Indeed assessments. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Warning: this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. What do millions of Views Alto consumers know? Well, they know that all Views Alto liquids are blended in the USA, with pods sold in tamper-evident packaging, and that Views Vapor products are available at reputable retailers. And now, you do too. Get to know Views Alto at Views.com and get it in store. Views. Charge beyond. Underage sale prohibited. Website restricted to age 21 and over tobacco consumers.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Partially sunny with scattered showers and thunderstorms around this afternoon and this evening. The high today 91, tonight's low 73. Tomorrow a mix of sun and clouds with scattered showers and thunderstorms by afternoon. The high at 93. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 89 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Follow Off the Edge on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube for live streams and instant analysis. Off the Edge with Jacob Harrison continues.
We're back here on Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama sports. I'm Jacob Harrison, breaking down Jameson Williams earlier in the first segment. If you missed any of it, you can catch the full breakdown, tide109.com. Don't sleep on Jameson Williams. Your phone calls 205-342-9904. In just a little bit, we'll hear the opening comments from Nick Saban at yesterday's press conference, as well as from Pete Golding and offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien a little bit later in the show as well. But first, JR, man, welcome into the show. What's going on, dude?
Hey, Jacob. I just wanted to check with you on something, but I liked your segment earlier where you broke down on, is it Jameson Williams?
Jameson Williams. I almost call him Jameis Winston so often, so I feel you on that one, man.
I was just saying that kind of gets, but yeah. But anyway, I enjoyed that. That was pretty good. But I want to ask you, and you can kind of go over that as well. Is it's kind of early to really make this determination, really, but still, I'm going to ask you anyway. And that is, what player that we have on the team that you feel like is really jumping off the page and looks like to be a brilliant star this year?
Well, by my money, it would, I broke down Jameson Williams for a reason. Yesterday's comments from Nick Saban about Jaleel Billingsley kind of put a little bit of a hamper on that. That's where I would go also. But, I mean, going defensively, Henry To'oTo'o. I don't think we kind of pay attention enough to the success that he had at Tennessee and what he brings to the team this year, because he really doesn't have to learn too terribly much from Jeremy Pruitt's system to Alabama's system. And when you pair the athleticism that he brings, and he's a better box linebacker than Christian Harris is, despite being a tad bit smaller. But when you bring what he has as an athlete and pair it with Christian Harris, then that creates such a matchup at the off-ball linebacker that's just incredible.
Yeah, I understand. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Oh, you good?
I'm still got little adverse effects of pneumonia.
I hear you.
But anyway, yeah, I agree that I think that there's a number of players to choose from. Really, it's just stacked from one end to the other, both offensive and defensive. And then as far as special teams, it's just kind of like a mix of different players from both sides, right? For the ball.
You mean like special teams contributors? Or you mean like kickers and punters?
Well, contributors.
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's Alabama, but it's still to the point. I kind of touched on a little bit my breakdown with Williams on the Tide109.com side of things, is that he played special teams for Ohio State last year, and that was very similar to the fact that Smitty played special teams. Josh Jobe played special teams. Patrick Surtain played special teams. So you're still in a position where you're Alabama and your depth is better than most teams in the country, but you've still got star players that are out there contributing too. And when I look at, especially coverage teams, because any defensive backups that are going to be on coverage teams on special teams is, hands down going to be better than anybody else in the country, because those guys could start all over the country as well, but they're also going to be contributors on this defense. And it'll give you, quick previews of guys like Deontay Lawson and Kool-Aid McKinstry and Christian Story. I think Christian Story is a guy that when we see him on special teams and then late in ball games and blowouts and those sorts of things, is a guy that everybody is going to get very, very hyped for before the season is over, as well as we, start to look forward into next year towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. Who's going to be our punt returner?
We didn't get to see any special teams Friday, but if I had to throw my money out on a wild guess and based off of, A-Day and those sorts of things, I think it'll be Kool-Aid. I think he's far too good of an athlete to keep off the field. I don't think he's going to win the job from Jalen Armour Davis because of what he's doing, what Armour Davis is doing. He's doing a great job. He did an incredible job at A-Day. And for all intents and purposes, everything we've heard is, he's still doing a great job at holding down that spot. But Kool-Aid is such a dynamic athlete, and he's got great ball skills. Why not just utilize those, as he's a freshman and as he's getting rotational reps? So I would venture to say it would possibly be Kool-Aid. That's what I'm hoping it is anyway.
Yeah, he is a spectacular specimen of a football player.
Yeah.
But anyway, I appreciate it very much, Jacob. You answered everything I asked and very thoroughly, and I appreciate it. And I'll be listening.
All right, JR, we always appreciate it, man. Take it easy.
All right, take care.
Absolutely. Go back out to the phone lines. George in Macon. George, what's going on, my man?
Nothing much, Jacob. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great on a Monday.
Just want to make a few comments. Devontae, people that were describing him were, not so much you, but they don't mention his speed. Every time you saw Devontae on the field, people were chasing him, and he was pulling away from him. His prospects, they were talking about that, Waller has great return ability, but, from what we saw of Devontae returning punts, not too bad. And he, I think he has deceptive speed and quickness because of his stride is so smooth. Story, I'm kind of like with you, what little we saw with him in the A-Day game and, mop-up duty, he's got tremendous quickness and anticipation. So I'm keeping him off the field is going to be pretty tough. And I guess I'm kind of agreeing with you. Kool-Aid being a punt returner, fantastic athlete, great quickness, and I kind of go with Nick Saban and Frank Beamer's theory of put great athletes on your return and special teams, and you'll get good results. Kind of like what Bear Bryant used to always say. He would always say, offense, defense, and special teams is what wins or loses the game for you. And just want to see what you think about my comments, and I really enjoy your show.
I always appreciate it, George. No, with Kool-Aid, I think it kind of goes back to last year when after Jalen Waddle broke his ankle, so many fans got up in arms. Well, why is Jalen Waddle out there anyways? Like, did you watch the 2019 Iron Bowl? Like, he played a massive role in Alabama staying in that ball game when Mac Jones had struggles. And you're absolutely right. I mean, special teams is as big a part of any game as anything. You go back, this is how we learned about what kind of player Reuben Foster was. This is what we saw the impact of Josh Jobe laying out the Notre Dame returner in the playoff game. those sorts of things matter on such a grand scale. And that's why I'm so excited to, get that opportunity to see guys like Christian Story take advantage of those spots, and Kool-Aid McKinstry and all his athletic ability to take advantage of those spots as well. But going back to your comments about Smitty, that's the thing though, is so often we get so in our heads as analysts of not pointing out the obvious. We're like, oh, well, this is a discrepancy, and this discrepancy goes against the norms, and therefore we have an issue, right? And with Smitty, it's so much based off of his size that we call into question his durability and all these sorts of things without like watching the tape and seeing the kind of hits that he took. So when you look at Jameson Williams and you're like, oh, well, he's a scrawny guy and he's only got the 15 catches and 3 touchdowns. Is he a one-trick pony, a guy that only gets down the field? Well, when you see what he did in special teams, when he tackled Devontae Smith himself, and then when you see another run where he catches a hitch, but he got so much separation off that hitch, he was able to make 2 guys on the Indiana Hoosiers defense miss. You see sparks of things that exist within his game, and you can kind of draw the conclusion that there's more there. We just need an opportunity to see it. And I think in his first year at Alabama, he's going to have opportunities to show what he is fully capable of. Similarly to Devontae Smith, when the show was his, he proved he was the most dominant player in the game and went out and won a Heisman. Might not have been the case had Jalen Waddle stayed healthy, right? So you've got to be able to, showcase what you have when the opportunity presents itself. And usually at Alabama, with the talent that surrounds you, you're able to do that no problem.
One more quick question. I mean, LeBron Ray, does he have to be the most unlucky football player ever? I mean, remember when he came in, they were saying nobody can block him, and he's going to be this and he's going to be that, and he's always injured. And I just feel bad for him because right when he gets ready to play, there's another injury.
Yeah, it's really a bummer. Now, Saban did say that he suffered the injury during the summer, and he should be on the back end of it. Should hopefully be ready around week 1 or week 2. But at the same time, like I'm right there with you, man. I want to see this guy just stay healthy enough to be a part of the rotation so that he can be dominant when he is on the field. He's not a guy that needs 60, 70 snaps to be effective on the defense. He only needs 30, 35, 40 to show how elite he is and to go make his bread in the NFL as a rotational guy as well. I mean, it's really unfortunate, but when you continue to look at the fact that all of these injuries are below the hip, all of these injuries are not circumstantial like Tua Tagovailoa's, where it's always a 300-pound guy landing on you wrong. These are always during workouts and those sorts of things. So it's really disappointing.
One more quick question. We're talking, you hear about what a fantastic athlete Milroe is with his quickness and speed and his height. Do you think that they might try to put him in some other position to take advantage of that? Or do you think we got so many other guys that have that ability that won't happen?
Well, that's similar to what they did with Christian Story, who was a high school quarterback, and they moved him to safety.
Right.
But they did that immediately. So I don't know if that's going to be the case with Milroe, because he's been so impressive throwing the football as well. And if you did move him, you'd be in a situation where this year you'd only have 2 scholarship quarterbacks. Next year it'd be 2 scholarship quarterbacks, or 3, excuse me, but 1 being a freshman. I like the idea of just allowing him to compete with Paul Tyson. And when Bryce Young's time is done, seeing who's the better guy, and all that athleticism that he brings really matches up well against what Paul Tyson brings, which is the height and the arm velocity. So that would be a very, very interesting quarterback battle down the road. But I would also anticipate that's a battle that's going on right now to see who's going to be the backup. I think Milroe, there's a reason behind all the noise, where there's smoke, there's fire. And for him to be continuously brought up and those sorts of things, I'm excited to see him more in practices down the road. But there's got to be a reason why he's catching so much smoke in conversation. He's got to be pushing for it.
Well, everybody says he's electric, and isn't he like 6'4", 6'5", with all that speed that they say he has?
I want to say he's a little bit shorter than that. I don't think he's 6'4", 6'5", but I mean, I think Saban has said it on multiple accounts that he is one of the most athletic players on the entire roster. regardless of position. And that's entertaining all in its own right. He's 6'2" in high school, so I imagine he's about 6'2", 6'3". But I mean, he's sculpted out of stone. I mean, the kid is cut, looks like a professional athlete already. So, and we're used to that here at Alabama. You look at guys like Bo Scarborough and the like, but he's got it all, man. I'm excited to see what he brings.
Well, let me ask you one more question. I know you're on the time crunch. I was listening to other people's evaluation after the one practice, and everything I hear is that the team looks a lot better in shape, but that would be an amazing conclusion considering I always thought they looked like they were in great shape. What's your observation?
I think it's hard because of what Scott Cochran's going through right now. Like, you don't want to kick him while he's down, but it is becoming more and more obvious that Dr. Matt Ray and David Ballou are doing such monumental things for this football program that Scott Cochran was flat out incapable of doing. The meathead pick things up, put them down, run gassers until you can't breathe, all that sort of stuff. It didn't work. It worked to a point, because Alabama was still winning national championships. Don't get me wrong. But when you're dealing with those types of injuries and those sorts of things, exhaustion, you can't have it. And I feel like with the technology and the science and everything that is behind what Alabama is dealing with, and it's one of the first things that Nick Saban led with when, they talked about the soft shell helmets, they're trying new things. The process of evolution is to see what works and what doesn't. So we see the soft shell helmets, and Saban gets asked about it. It's like, well, it's science. It's from the NFL. It's interesting, but it's still a little early to draw conclusions from it. So, when you balance all those things together, you see the results from last year, despite not even having the team together as much as they needed to. And now you have a full offseason of it. I mean, we'll see what further advancements Ray and Ballou are able to bring to the team. But I stand in solidarity with a lot of people on that opinion that those two are some of the best things that ever happened to Alabama football. And it's going to make these players a lot healthier, which is going to allow them to make more money in the NFL as well, to be healthier players getting to that level. But it's going to allow them to reserve stamina for an entire 15-game, possibly 16-game season once we get to expanded playoffs. It really pays off in the long run for these athletes.
Well, listen, thank you for taking my call, and I enjoy your show.
I always appreciate it, George. It's always a good conversation, man. Take it easy. That's George in Macon, 205-342-9904. We'll take a break. Curtis is right, though, man. Mr. Wright, Pete Golding. We'll hear from him a little bit later in the show, the things that he had to say about the defense, including Will Anderson, and the game plan, the thought behind running these defenses in today's game. I thought Pete Golding had an excellent breakdown, things that I have agreed with for many, many years, and a lot of fans don't look at it this way. Turnovers result in points, and that matters over yards any day of the week. We'll hear it from Pete Golding. We'll hear from Nick Saban in just a bit here on Off the Edge. Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide Sports.
Hey Sarah, how's business?
It's going well. Our clients love our work. I just wish that we could figure out how to grow faster.
I hear you. Is it slow for everybody in your industry right now?
Actually, no. I see competitors all over who seem to be very busy, even though I know my work is better than theirs. I just wish I knew how they were finding new customers, because if I could do it too, I know I could beat them.
I had the same challenge until I signed up for Town Square. Now my website is on page 1 of Google, and I'm getting leads every day.
Growing a business is challenging, and figuring out where to start is the hardest part. If your business does great work, but just needs help finding more customers, then Town Square can help. Go to mylocalcustomers.com for a free competitive analysis that will show you how the most successful businesses grow and how you can do it too. These strategies are simple, and we can show you how to apply them to your business. Be one of the first businesses to sign up, and you'll receive $500 in free advertising on this radio station. If your business does great work, but just needs help finding more customers, then Town Square can help. Visit mylocalcustomers.com. That's mylocalcustomers.com.
This is a metaphor for your business's journey. Sometimes it feels like the course keeps changing right before your eyes. Whoa! And in order to maneuver it, you need an expert by your side. That's what Dell Technologies advisors do. They have the tech solutions you need to help you get out in front and stay ahead of the game. Woo! Call an advisor today at 877-ASK-DELL. And do more with modern devices in Windows 10 Pro.
Susan, it's so great to finally be able to get together again.
Oh, it sure is. And I really appreciate you picking up the bill.
I'm happy to. I've got the extra cash. Since we've all been driving so much more again, I've been using Get Upside, the free gas app that pays you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get paid cash when you buy gas with the Get Upside app?
Yes, up to 25 cents a gallon. Cash back every time I buy gas.
Does that actually add up to anything?
Some months I make $200 to $300.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the free Get Upside app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now in the App Store or Google Play to save up to 25 cents a gallon when you buy gas. Use promo code BLUE for a 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's up to 50 cents a gallon on your next fill-up. You can cash out anytime to PayPal or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code BLUE for a 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code BLUE.
At Target, we know there are a lot of firsts when it comes to going back to school. First impressions, first chapters, first day photos. So with easy and safe ways to shop like order pickup, drive up, and school list assist, make Target your first stop back to school.
You're listening to Off the Edge on Tide 100.9.
We are back off the edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide Sports. Jacob Harrison, Bryant Horn producing, intern Mason Woods hanging out with us as well. Let's jump out and listen to some Nick Saban sound. In his opening comments, of course, he reminisced on the passing of legendary head football coach Bobby Bowden, but he also touched on what Alex Rodriguez said to the team, I believe Friday afternoon, before or after practice, and really spoke on how, you know, the transition from a championship team to the next year and the distractions. And when you couple in the fact that there's even more distractions for Alabama football this year than there were last year, getting back into a normal reality, you know, with COVID being in the state of existence that it's in now, which is a mystery to us all, but also NIL, those sorts of things where, you know, the confidence of being in that space and trying to repeat. It's a difficult thing to do. You've got all the turnover on offense, but all the experience on defense. All these things play into themselves in the effort to try to continue that success. Here's Nick Saban talking about that challenge for the 2021 season.
A-Rod, you know, spoke to the team on Friday night. I think he did, you know, a great job of, you know, talking about being successful as a Yankee when they won the championship in 2009, and how everything was so different, you know, in 2010 when they weren't able to repeat, even though in his mind they had a better team. And, you know, he made an interesting, and he talked about it wasn't the distractions, it was the attractions, that everybody got more attention. Everybody had more people pulling at them, whether it was to speak at banquets or whatever. So it made it much more difficult to focus on the things that you needed to focus on to be the best player that you can be, and, you know, to be the best teammate that you can be. And, you know, the disease of me is always something. It's a Pat Riley quote that, you know, how much credit do I want relative to how much I'm willing to invest in, you know, the team being successful. So it was kind of interesting and certainly fit, you know, our profile and our situation of where we are as a successful organization coming off a successful year, and everybody understanding that what we did last year will have absolutely nothing to do with, you know, how we perform and how we prepare this year. In fact, everyone that we play will be their target because we were successful a year ago. So everybody has to understand the level of commitment that it takes to, sort of be able to accept those challenges in a positive way. From an injury standpoint, I think LeBron Ray has a pretty significant groin injury that he kind of got toward the end of the summer that may keep him out for a couple weeks. But hopefully, we'll get him back and he'll be confident in his ability to play. And we'll just have to wait and see day to day how that goes.
So that was Nick Saban discussing the challenges of going from one successful season to the next and the buy-in as well, which is interesting because, of course, Saban says that sort of thing all the time, right? It's the buy-in, it's team over me, those sorts of things, which can be boiled down to coach speak, but also at the end of the day, very, very seriously, those sorts of things do matter. And Nick Saban has proven that. You can give a kid the world, but if you can't get him to be disciplined enough to be a championship caliber football player, then you're going to have problems in the effort of winning championships. And not that they're totally related, but it's interesting that later, during the question portion of the press conference for Nick Saban, he talks about how Will Anderson is a guy that's never satisfied. He's one of the best players on the entire football team, but he's never satisfied. And then on Jaleel Billingsley, it was a question about what he brings to the team this year. And instead of talking about his athleticism, the unique ability that he has as a tight end, it's about the fact that he needs to buy into the entire program, right? Which isn't something you like to hear. It doesn't send me into a reeling panic mode, and I don't think it should any fans either. Because he says hopefully within a few days he'll be back, so therefore there is the opportunity for him to be back. It's not, these aren't the things that are similar to when Antonio Alfano and the Ayabi Anoma, those kind of guys, leave the program altogether. I don't think it was that dire, but it is something to it matters. It all matters within the grand scope. But when one guy chases a different standard than another, it's an opportunity for somebody else to step up and to make the most of those opportunities. Listen, we all know Pete Golding said right a lot yesterday. So he's Mr. Right now. But I gotta say, man, I love the enthusiasm that he brought. He is getting more and more comfortable as the defensive coordinator. And I think he said some of the things that are just so blatantly obvious in today's football that make you really understand it on such a basic level. Because that's the thing about football. It's such a basic sport that it's easy for a mass audience to understand what exactly is going on. But when you really dive into the minutia and the minute details and the nuance of how things are done, what you're looking for as far as, what defines success, that's where you start to catch all the interesting things about football, right? That's why I love an analysis more than anything else. And that's what Pete Golding talked about. Now, when in his opening statement, he talked a lot about the mentals, right? The abilities of guys who were freshmen last year. You think about Malachi Moore and Will Anderson, and younger guys like Tim Smith, where they come in and they're able to contribute, but they may not fully grasp what the defensive effort is really going for, right? But now coming into this year where they've got a full off season, they've actually got a real opportunity to not only learn better in the classroom, which is something that, Golding touched on was, the Zoom aspect of last year's offense allowed them to slow down a lot of the teaching principles of what the defensive scheme was and those sorts of things, and, really implement it, put it into their heads what assignments are and why those assignments are the way they are. But then it doubled back into, well, you're still an athlete and you're a football player at that. There's a reason you take 20 minutes doing install and then you scrimmage for 15, right? You've got to learn how to do it and then go out and apply it all on the field. The chalkboard is great, but putting it into action, putting it into motion, creating muscle memory and being able to react on the field rather than think, oh, I've got this guy. I've got to do this if X happens, and before you know it, the ball snapped and you haven't moved, and now you're not a good football player, right? The best ones can take all of that and apply it and put it into motion through practice or in the game or whatever it needs to be, right? And that's what Pete Golding talked about a little bit later. We'll take a break and we'll come back. We'll play that audio from Pete Golding as well as some joint audio from Nick Saban and Pete Golding talking about our guy, Will Anderson. You can roll your eyes if you want to, Bryant Horn. He's going to win all the awards, double-digit sacks. He's the guy. The show's called Off the Edge for a reason. We love pass rushers, guy. So get that smug face out of here. We'll take a break. Off the Edge, Tide 100.9. You're home for Alabama Sports.
The all-new Holiday Inn Express and Suites Tuscaloosa East is finally here, just in time for football season. Not only do we invite you for your overnight stay, but we invite you to apply to join our staff and earn even more incentives as well. We're all new and locally owned, and we want the community's influence when serving our local and out-of-town guests during football season. Our guests at the all-new Holiday Inn Express East Tuscaloosa will get to enjoy our newly constructed facility with the latest IHG standards, our daily free breakfast, outdoor pool, and our amazing staff, which you could be a part of because we're now hiring. Not to mention, we have the best rates in town. Welcome home, Tuscaloosa. Visit ihg.com. Select the Tuscaloosa East location to book your stay and to submit your application of employment. The all-new Holiday Inn Express and Suites Tuscaloosa East. Now hiring and offering the best rates in town this football season. Welcome to Tuscaloosa. We don't hope you'll enjoy your stay. We'll ensure it because we take care of people. The all-new Holiday Inn Express and Suites Tuscaloosa East is finally here just in time for football season. Holiday Inn Express East Tuscaloosa. Locally owned and managed.
SUVs, cars, and trucks. Townsend Nissan has over 100 new Nissans in stock and ready for you to drive home today. And yes, now's the time to buy with rates as low as 0% and rebates up to $2,000 on select models. And that's saving you money today at Townsend Nissan. And remember, we work hard for your business and complete satisfaction. SUVs, cars, and trucks. Townsend Nissan has one of the biggest and best selections around, and we'll pay top dollar for that trade. Shop Townsend Nissan, Tuscaloosa. TownsendNissan.com.
With the help of Cheerios Oat Crunch Almond, I get everyone's morning started with a smile. It has a delicious and hearty combination of the Cheerios you love, whole grain oats, and sliced almonds for an extra crunchy crunch. That's how I set the rhythm for a great day. Look for Cheerios Oat Crunch Almond in your local grocery store.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Partially sunny with scattered showers and thunderstorms around this afternoon and this evening. The high today 91, tonight's low 73. Tomorrow a mix of sun and clouds with scattered showers and thunderstorms by afternoon. The high at 93. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 90 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
You're listening to Off the Edge on Tide 100.9.
This is Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide Sports. I'm Jacob Harrison, hanging out on a Monday, breaking it all down, analyzing the Crimson Tide as we are getting into the thick of the 2021 fall training camp for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Pete Golding, as I alluded to in the previous segment, talked a lot about how defense is evolving and how they actually have a number that they're trying to keep opponents to, and they're trying to build a number for turnovers on what their goals are for the Alabama defense. Here's Pete Golding talking about the evolution of college football defenses.
Well, I think to me, you got into coaching, or I got into coaching. Like our first goal on a defensive goal sheet, it's still a defensive goal sheet. The number one thing is to win the game. Right? So depending upon who you're playing and what style of offense they have, based on what style of offense you have, sometimes you got to do different things in order just to win the game. That's the number one thing, right? What do we have to do to win the game? All right, now, the next most important thing to me from a defensive standpoint is to not allow points, right? If we score more points than them, right, we're going to win the what? Game. That goes back to the number one piece. So the point piece of this, right, hasn't changed to me, right? If you go back and look over the last 5 years, in order to be number one in the country, right, which is the standard here at Alabama, and this is why I took the job, right, it's going to be holding people to 13 points or less. And that's still our goal, I don't care if they're throwing it 70 times or they're running it 70 times. It doesn't matter. We got to find a way, right, to keep them out of the end zone, right? And there's multiple different ways to do that, right, based on tempo offenses throwing the ball. All right, a lot of times make them drive the field, and then now once they get low red, let's tighten this thing up, right? They don't have much space and play well in the red zone, right? Playing well on third down. But that's not going to change. From a point aspect on that, that's not going to change. To me, we've got to do a better job of, right? And the easiest way to do that is to take the football what? Away, right? So again, we only created 22 turnovers last year. When we got the ball back to our offense, every time we got a turnover, it was 4.7 points. Meaning every time we picked the ball, every time we scooped up a fumble, right, it averaged out to our offense scoring at least 4.7 points. So for us, every turnover is 5 points, right? So when they're down there in that red area or that plus alum, we've kept them from scoring. That's 7, and we're going to score 5. It's a 12-point difference in the game, right? So that emphasis, and this is something Coach puts an emphasis on every day. This is how we start practice, right, from a turnover sacred standpoint. But in today's game, you got to be able to create turnovers, and you got to take them away. They're not going to give them to you, right? So I think that's one thing that we've got to do a better job of that's going to help all the categories from a defensive standpoint. But the game's the same, right? They're going to have to find a way to run the football. We got to stop the run, right? We got to be on the same page, right? Our goal hasn't changed, right? From a pass attempt standpoint, it's same as. So, yeah, offensive changed a little bit, right? But defensively, our goals and our philosophy haven't, right? So, again, that's not going to change. That's who we are. That's this place. That's how they've been. That's the expectation. That's how it should be.
Right? No, I love it. I love it. I love it. But listen, Alabama led the SEC in points allowed per game last year with 19. And Alabama's still shooting for 13. And they've done the math and done the you can say you hate analytics all you want, but when you look at the fact that he just talked about how it's a 12-point swing for every turnover, that's insanity. The fact that a turnover for Alabama equals 5 points, that's insane. That is unreal. And that's why for all this time, it's who cares about how many yards you give up? It doesn't matter. Yards don't equal points. They can to a degree. You let up 500 yards, you probably let up 30 points, right? It's common sense. Like, you do want to stop other teams. I'm not saying just let them do whatever and don't focus on key players. It's not at all what that means. It means forcing turnovers, and it means keeping opponents out of the end zone. It's the name of the game. There's only one way to win. It's by having more points. And if your defense is able to stifle anybody in college football to 13 points, you're going to win. You're going to win because your offense, I don't care how good or how bad it is probably going to score at least 14. You're at least going to have 2 touchdowns. Like, good luck trying to score less unless you're playing an Alabama defense, a Georgia defense, an Ohio State defense, an Indiana defense, a Northwestern defense. There's only 10, 15 defenses like that in the entire country. And Alabama's got the depth to beat them all. Man, I'm excited. Pete Golden's got me ready to run through that wall right there. This is Off the Edge. Thanks for hanging out with us. Big thanks to Alabama Vintage. Thanks to Bryant Horn, Mason Woods. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Jay Barker Show is up next. Ryan Fowler with the game, 2-6. Tied tonight, returns from 6 to 7. I'm Jacob Harrison at J Harrison OTE on the Twitter account, at Off the Edge 109, all the socials. We appreciate it. Have a good rest of your Monday, everybody.